Howdy, YouTube. We are back with some Rev Says Desu. This time, instead of talking about Pokemon, we're talking about Japan slams Ubisoft's desperate attempt to save AC. This is a long title that claims overseas version. Did anybody actually read the rest of this title, or did they stop at Japan slams Ubisoft desperate attempt? That's where I would have stopped. But it's Rev Says Desu, so I know I was going to like him. Give him a like, give him a sub if you like this video by the end of it. Give me a like and a sub if you like this video by the end of mine. All right, let's get right into Rev. No time to waste.
Here. So obviously there's been a lot of controversy involving Assassin's Creed Shadows
A
and
lot.
Ubisoft over the past
That's
year or
an
so.
understatement.
However, as we get closer to the second delayed release of this game,
It's
there's
delayed
almost
again
hourly
today.
controversies involving this game. And
In all fairness, it was supposed to come out in February, a week after Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks before Monster Hunter Wilds. And you were going to come out between Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Monster Hunter Wilds, two of the biggest games of the year. You stood no chance as Assassin's Creed Shadow. No offense. It was the right call. This is the only good call they've made the entire time.
things are really getting out of hand, and that's what we're going to cover
You have
in this
a
video. The
mail,
most recent
Rev.
developments,
You should
where you
answer
can see Ubisoft is getting increasingly desperate to try to save this game and to also rewrite the narrative with Japanese gamers in a desperate attempt to appease them that, of course, these Japanese gamers are not buying. But let's look at this first example here. So we had the story trailer come out a few days ago, and as you can see, it's not doing so hot. It is about a 60% dislike ratio, and honestly, sub 500,000 views in a few days for a massive channel like this with a huge IP, I think that's pretty underwhelming, especially considering most of the people who watched it didn't like it. And things really aren't looking much better when they show acts of desperation.
Feel the fear of being hunted and under threat on a mysterious island in Claws of Awaji. The upcoming expansion for... Oh, how is there an upcoming expansion for a game that hasn't launched yet? Get it at no additional cost by pre-ordering the... Oh, they made it to sell pre-orders. Sad, sad. Oh, you know what that means, though? Huh? You know what that means? That means if you don't pre-order it and buy it day one, you now get to download Assassin's Creed Shadows with this Claws of Awaji as part of your download, taking up room on your desktop or console because it's part of the game for the pre-order, which means they're going to include it in the base game, and it's going to take up God knows how many gigabytes on your hard drive, and you can't remove it because Ubisoft is stupid and bad at their jobs. So they're not going to be able to separate the pre-order DLC from the game, and they're also too lazy to figure out how to do that. So you are going to lose, bare minimum for a DLC with this level of quality, I'd say at least 20 to 30 gigabytes of your hard drive just for something you're never going to be able to play.
Like this. So
I know this because other games have done it. Many games have done it. Genshin does it. Genshin has about 4 years worth of extra stuff that you can't play because it was a one-time event in the game with backstory for characters you're going to play that you'll never know the backstory of because you can't play that stuff. But guess what? It's all in the download because they won't separate it from the game. So there is content there you won't be able to play. But it is taking up room on my hard drive. Yay!
They posted this right after saying, "Feel the fear of being hunted and under threat on a mysterious island in Claws of Awaji. The upcoming expansion for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Get it at no additional cost by pre-ordering this game."
It's important
now.
we immediately expand a world no one wants to play.
Assassin's Creed Shadows twice now, and we don't even know if there's going to be another delay. Who knows at this point? And now they're trying to convince you to not only buy this game, but also line yourself up for the first expansion of this game. I mean, absolutely nobody should be trusting anything with Ubisoft in this title to actually go out and try to secure an expansion when the first one's not even out and it's been delayed twice is crazy desperation. On top of that, we're seeing some previews of this game. There was a showcase of this game a couple of days ago, and it was a disaster because there was multiple moments where the game was extremely
I didn't know this
buggy,
came out.
including this scene that a lot of people are talking about.
Can you pet the dog?
Yep.
He's not sure.
He's not sure.
Can't even pet a dog in their own game. Now that seems even more
Why would
wild.
you put a dog in a game if you can't pet the dog?
This game has been delayed. It was supposedly ready or close to ready back in November, but they've
Just
delayed
don't have
it
the
twice
dog in the
to
game.
fix little things like bugs and what have you. But the game is now less than 2 months away from this latest release date, and it's still got glaring bugs in it, and they're just throwing money away because, as pointed out here, this delay has cost them an additional 20 million euros, and they still can't get basic things about this game right.
Another
and there was
20
another
million?
pain point here where they tried to, I guess, mock the people pointing out this scene by quoting Nick Tech, saying, "Note to self, make work in progress appear larger." I don't think this was a good idea, especially when your PR is in the toilet, okay? This game, again, is very close to release, and now you're deciding to be the snappy,
How about don't fix work
sarcastic,
in progress so
social
appear
media
larger,
account here.
just
Like,
make it so
this
you
is
can pet
not
the dog.
rubbing people the right way, and they're taking this as a, well, basically some tone from the people running this account when they have no position to be acting like this whatsoever. On top of that, we saw a
Yeah, they
final
have lost
preview
all
from
right to
IGN,
defend
of all
themselves on
people,
this
the
stuff.
classic shills over there who are trying to prop up this game. And as you can see, this final preview is not doing so hot. In fact, it's doing worse than the story trailer with 4,700 likes and 15,000 dislikes. I give that a 7 out of 10. IGN approved, 7 out of 10. Now, even IGN and their shilling of this game, even they admit it's a buggy mess. But they also say something.
Dude, if you got IGN, oh my god, do you know how bad it has to be for IGN to say, "Oh, this is not good"? They are some of the biggest glazers in the industry.
About the culture and how Ubisoft represented Japanese history in this game.
Even if the familiar crop of open-world bugs and quirks popped up during my time, I still found a great deal to appreciate with Shadows and its world building. While this conceit is not an uncommon backdrop for video games, which can be easy to mess up with insensitive representation, Assassin's Creed Shadows so far does well to justify its take on an open-world RPG set during this culturally rich era, especially in its handling of the two protagonists.
I'm sorry, what? They
Yeah,
did
what?
a good job representing this era in
You know who doesn't think they did a good job? Japan. All of Japan. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe there was a lawsuit from Japan. They are outraged at so much about this game, and they're just continuing to say, "Hey, we did a good job. We accurately represented. See all these Chinese architecture that shouldn't be here in feudal Japan? They belong. They belong. We know Japan better than actual Japan does."
Japanese history. Are we going to ignore everything that happened over the past year or so? That's absolutely wild. I just think it's another attempt at gaslighting. You can also see that Ubisoft is trying to lighten the blow when it comes to Japanese gamers. They are on a campaign right now, a last-ditch effort to try to convince them to buy this game. And you can see this article posted today by Bounding Into Comics. Here's the
Assassin's Creed Shadows Associate Director says it's been very tricky adapting feudal Japan into video game form. We want to avoid telling a culture about their culture. Well, that's what you're doing when you keep changing their culture to fit the narrative you want to shove into it.
the headline. Assassin's Creed Shadows Associate Director says it's been very tricky adapting feudal Japan into video game form. We want to avoid telling a culture their own culture. Well, unfortunately, Ubisoft has been doing that since the jump on day one with this game. Now, something I always found very interesting is Laura Fryer's take on this. She is the executive producer of Gears of War, or the former one, and she made this video talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows and how this game and its setting was something that she and anyone who really was looking at the risks of this whole thing would avoid, because it's very hard to nail intricate stories and pieces of history like that without offending people. Even if you have a earnest
I'm not
heart,
sure I'd ever want
to
to try and
best,
tackle that.
It's very hard to nail a setting like feudal Japan without having some inaccuracies and things that might turn people away from your game. And that's exactly what happened in this case. And she said in her own career, she was presented with ideas that sounded really good on paper and really fun, but they involved culture-based things that are going to be really hard to nail down and might end up just offending a bunch of people and making,
especially when it was clear they didn't even try at all. Like the guy they hired to represent the accuracy of Japan wasn't even from Japan. He was just some white dude who wrote a book that wasn't even true.
a fool out of your studio, therefore you don't start them in the first place, just like with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now let's see the actual quote here. So they said this: "We want to avoid telling a culture about their own culture," he explained. "That's one of the reasons as well why we have Yasuke as an outsider in the game. His perspective allows us to be a little more, I would say, free in terms of what Yasuke can do or say, as he's not from Japan and he doesn't know exactly."
So Yasuke's in the game, so they didn't have to be accurate. and they could just do whatever they wanted to and say, "Oh, that's why Yasuke's in the game. He's not from there." Wow, lazy.
exactly everything. We were careful and attentive to feedback. No, you weren't. And still, it's
No,
been
you
a
weren't.
pretty constructive journey learning about Japan on the way. So that's the problem too. Like you're learning about this entire thing as you're making the game, and you're doing a lot of things that are offending people greatly. I made a little list here just to go through some of the things they did to offend Japanese gamers, and fill in the blanks if I miss anything in the comment section. But you start off with the choice of Yasuke as the co-protagonist of this game, an African man in a feudal Japan setting. That's already something that's going to disappoint a lot of Japanese gamers who are looking forward.
Yeah, because Japan was one of the three most anticipated settings for an Assassin's Creed game, and the director of the Assassin's Creed games actually came out and said, "You don't want that. It would be one of the worst places to actually have an Assassin's Creed game." And yet here they are, desperate enough for money that they decided to give them what they wanted and royally screwed it up.
To a game, an Assassin's Creed game based in Japan. Then you have the label of samurai being consistently applied to him by Ubisoft based on a fan fiction written by Thomas Lockley, who basically vandalized the Wikipedia page of Yasuke with his...
He didn't vandalize it, he created it. He created the Wikipedia page to validate the book he wrote. And then he cited the book on the Wikipedia page. And then before the book was published, which, yes, he cited the book on the Wikipedia page before it even released. And then he cited the Wikipedia page in the book for when it published to give them both legitimacy, quoting each other, both written by him.
his own fan fictions, and that is what Ubisoft ran with despite his wild claims being debunked by Japanese historians left and right. Ubisoft decided to listen to Lockley instead of the actual Japanese historians who disagreed with his claims that Yasuke was a samurai. Then they would flip-flop on that approach when it comes to historical accuracy over and over again for pretty much the majority of 2024. On one day, they're trying to be extremely historically accurate. The next day, they want more creative freedom and historical accuracy.
Yeah, they did bounce back and forth between we care to we don't really care that much. It's just supposed to be fun.
At least initial looks into the game and the environment in the game, we saw so many historical inaccuracies, especially with architecture and things like that, where you had Chinese architecture and also sloppy AI of other architecture from other East Asia countries. It made absolutely no sense. Then to add on to that, the first previews we got of Yasuke, an African man, was him running around to a hip-hop beat, murdering Japanese people. It was just a very odd look.
Yeah, every other protagonist from an Assassin's Creed game was from the region and time that the game took place. And this is the first one that's not, and suddenly it's a big black guy who actually existed in history but isn't fulfilling the role he actually did in history. As well as the music has always been accurate to the time. Even if it felt more formal with the instruments and whatnot, it was always made to sound like it could have come from that time. Whereas this one, the only time it doesn't is when the black guy is fighting and they're playing hip-hop trance music over it. Pretty racist, if you ask me.
And then the next thing that happened is the whole Zoro Blade controversy, where Assassin's Creed Shadows and Ubisoft came out with this quote-unquote original merch for this game, where basically it was a one-piece merch from Amazon that they pretty much just slapped a new coat of paint on. And then we had the biggest scandal.
Yeah. One of the pieces of merch was a sword used by Zoro from One Piece, and they just recolored it. They couldn't be bothered to think of their own merch. They just stole from One Piece.
In my opinion, at least with Japanese gamers, the one-legged Tory controversy, where they came out with merch with a very culturally important damaged piece of architecture from World War II that they wildly plopped into the background of some merch for this game and offended Japanese people.
Not to mention being historically inaccurate. There were no one-legged Tory gates back then. It didn't exist until we dropped the bomb. Well, 2 bombs in Japan, and they left that one-legged Tory gate up as a memorial for the people that were lost. It did not exist then, and they're putting the 2 characters from feudal Japan onto the one-legged Tory gate that wouldn't exist for like hundreds of years.
Greatly with that one. Then the game is delayed for a second time, and that new release date that we're waiting on now is the anniversary of a massive terrorist attack in Japan where about a dozen people were killed by sarin nerve gas. I mean, It's one
Right. I completely forgot about that. They are now deciding that after the second pushback of the release of the game, they decided to release it. This game that has offended Japan on the day of a terrorist attack that killed a bunch of people in Japan. This is not a good day to do this.
one of those things, and people, you can feel free to disagree with me on this, but I feel like most of these mistakes are not done with a
Also, them being wrong about him being a samurai, they removed him being a samurai in the Japanese Steam description, but they left him being a samurai in every other country. Everyone else's Steam description says that he's a samurai. So they never actually backpedaled on that. They just hid it from the Japanese people and let everyone else keep trying to be fed that lie.
malicious heart where they're trying to go out there and intentionally offend Japanese people. I don't think that's the case. I think they're just stupid and they don't do their due diligence and they don't do their research and they're making these decisions and learning as they go, so to speak, in ways that end up offending people greatly. And it's a terrible look with their PR. Their PR is so low right now. I don't even know how they could turn things around at this point. But this wouldn't be the final attempt to appeal to
There's another one,
Japanese
apparently.
gamers. It looks like they're trying to devalue at least the public imaging of Yasuke with this game. As you can see, the
Wow.
Yasuke's been
Burying
removed
the
from
black guy.
Assassin's
What are
Creed
you,
Shadows
Disney?
pre-order banner. This is before, this is after. They put Naoe front and center and they basically yeeted Yasuke right out of the frame. And you can see this was a discovery made by Kotaku in Action here on Reddit. And the comments to this pretty much add up to the sort of general feeling. Just remove him from the game. Yeah, forget about removing him
honestly.
from the pre-order banner. Just remove him entirely. Bye-bye, Ubisoft. You won't be missed. I wonder how cringe the game will be if you only played with Naoe. And a lot of people are also like debating on which
It's gonna
protagonist
be
you
an
play, 'cause it
awful
sounds like
game
you
to
can
play with
switch
as
at pretty
Naoe.
much any whim you want. And some people are impressed with Naoe, some people are not. But again, Yasuke's been controversial since day one. But we'll talk a little bit more about the actual gameplay in a bit. But there was also another controversial post made very recently by Ubisoft through their Japanese account, where they say this, as translated by Google: Assassin's Creed Shadows differences in expression between the overseas North America, Europe, and Japanese
We're getting
versions.
into it.
And you
We're
can see
getting
this
into it.
post right here, and this Japanese YouTuber would provide a translation of the text. It says, regarding the differences in content between overseas North America, Europe, and Japanese versions of Assassin's Creed Shadows. For the Japanese version of Assassin's Creed Shadows, certain in-game depictions have been modified to comply with the regulations of the rating board. As a result, the following changes have been made.
Okay.
The option to toggle the dismemberment of enemies during gameplay has been removed, and the dismemberment of enemies' heads and limbs is now always
Ooh,
disabled.
they're not gonna like
the
that.
depiction of dismembered body parts has been altered. Some Japanese voice lines that play in the overseas North America, Europe version have been modified. I find this one to be
Modified
the
to
most
what?
interesting. I think these top ones
From what
are
to
an appeal
what?
to the rating system in Japan, which is unfortunate for them for reasons some of these users will point out. But this one's interesting because it's very open-ended, and a lot of people are predicting this is talking about whether or not he's going to be referred to as a samurai or something
Probably.
else like a
I'd bet
retainer.
that,
But
considering
here's some of the
the
comments,
Steam
translated
descriptions.
again. Change to Japanese voice expression, ... I guess Yasuke is called a samurai in the overseas version, but is described differently in the Japanese version. Here's another one saying,
Warrior,
in quotes, some
probably.
of the Japanese audio played in overseas has been changed. And they say, the overseas version will probably say Yasuke is a legendary samurai anyway, right? And then that same Japanese YouTuber also provided some more translated comments. This one saying, because of you, some people overseas now believe that Yasuke, a black man, was a samurai who significantly impacted Japanese history. This has led to a harmful trend of black supremacists claiming that samurai originated from black people and that Japanese culture is essentially black. AI
You gave them a door and they walked through it. Oh my god.
generated images of black samurai are now being spread as if they were historical facts. This is a very serious offense. And this person's not lying, by the way. I remember over the past year, there's been multiple viral posts containing very clearly AI-generated black samurais where people are saying there was always black samurais and they were actually very common in Japan. Therefore, Yasuke is a samurai. It was absolutely wild
Press F to
misinformation.
doubt.
Here's another one saying we cannot accept the blurring of lines between fiction and reality. While Japanese people are very tolerant of creative works, we cannot simply ignore the fact that our country's history is being greatly distorted or grossly misunderstood by so-called historians who are careless about the truth. It is clear that Yasuke was not a samurai, but rather a retainer of Nobunaga Oda. Please understand. Here's another one. Oh my god, this shitty white woman in the Ubi game was so condescending when she said, they used to behead people all the time in Japan back then, so barbaric. I watched it so many times. If they're going to portray Japan like that, they should at least release the original version
They
in
don't have the
Japan
balls
too.
to do that.
And then this one says, they told us that beheading was a daily occurrence in Japan, and now they're telling us we can't do it in the Japanese version. I
Ooh,
distinctly
culturally
remember
accurate.
players who were able to slice through enemies in Tsushima, so changing Legendary Samurai to Fearless Warrior is the extent of your modifications. That's just double speak. That is the irony here too, right? So they're talking about these culturally relevant things and things that happen, like the beheadings and sorts of tactics and things like that that happened back then, but then the Japanese players can't even play it themselves. That seems very odd to me. It goes beyond just what Ubisoft wants. It's also the rating system in Japan, but it's obviously a very strange thing to
Yeah,
see
I
overall.
understand the rating
But
system
let's
in
look into some
Japan
of the
part.
reviews. This is a good review.
I
by
wasn't
Skill Up
offended by
here.
that.
And they point
Oh,
out
Skill
what I
Up. We
feel
love
and
Skill
many others
Up.
feel about the gameplay previews that we're seeing, and it's that this game is just kind of It's like a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10. The combat looks
He did
pretty
not give it a 7
average
out of 10.
at best, and the story looks somewhat interesting. The environment looks good, but there's nothing that's really that'll blow you away about this game. But one thing I find interesting in particular is the gameplay featuring Yasuke. He's basically the Gary Stu of this game. He's pretty much invincible, as you'll see right here.
The bigger problem with it is that Yosuke is incredibly fast. The speed of his strikes, how short his animation recovery times are, how quickly he can dodge and how much distance he covers during those dodges, the speed of his various special moves and how he sort of streaks like a bolt of lightning across the battlefield.
He's zipping
meant to be
around,
this
dude.
massive lumbering
Holy
force of
crap.
nature, but none of that power is communicated through his combat because he's
Like, that's what I thought was cool about his design. Like, forget about all the historical inaccuracies for a second. I kind of like that he was like this big lumbering character in this feudal Japan setting. It makes him look very physically imposing.
Yeah,
but
he should
he's
be
literally,
slower
like,
and strong.
zooming around the map, and he's
That's
super
like the whole thing.
agile. It just doesn't really make
Otherwise,
sense.
why would you play as
He's
Yahweh?
just as spry, quick, and agile as Nawe is. Plus, Yasuke is like borderline invincible. I don't think I died once while playing with him for 3.5 hours. He deals so much damage. He is so fast and so resilient that it's legitimately difficult to die. Just to give you an example of how much of a unit this man is,
This
he
is
can
crazy.
obviously burst through doors when you sprint. It's how Yasuke progresses through levels when Nawe has to find another way around. But Yasuke isn't just limited to charging through wooden doors. He can also charge through concrete balustrades.
Yeah.
Which should not be happening.
So basically, he's an incredibly overpowered character, probably because Ubisoft thought they'd be labeled as racist if he wasn't completely overpowered. But
so
also,
that's why you
I'm
can't be
trying to
caring
talk
about that
this.
stuff. You
People
gotta
are
care
like,
about the game being
"Where's
good
the
first."
reviews with they, them, Big Chungus Warrior?" People are also pointing out the other characters. There hasn't been too much about them in the previews, but I just thought this post was funny. But let's end it here with another
That was
strange
funny.
set of
Big
developments
Chungus.
involving this game, where there's some things that I look at and I go, who is this game for exactly?
Shadows ditches the need for hunting, and instead, you can find and draw rare wildlife found in the wild. It was an odd activity at first, but I found them endearing and a relaxing change of pace. I soon found myself being taken in by how atmospheric and thoughtful the
I'm
setting
not
was.
sure Assassin's Creed fans are going to be into that. I mean, that feels like they just took that from Ghost of Tsushima because they thought, hey, this is a better game. It's the exact. They did it better than us. We should just steal some of their stuff.
Yeah, I don't think people want this who play Assassin's Creed titles. Just saying, but also on top of that, we see a big focus on like world building, which is not too surprising, but there's also like pets. Like you can get these dogies
Okay,
over here.
solid.
Again,
Can you pet
who
them?
is this game for exactly? It seems very confusing. It seems like they're literally like trying to appeal to like an Animal Crossing type crowd, and that's not who plays Assassin's Creed, especially not this game. But
This
anyways,
currency up
that's
here
the most
worries me,
recent
though.
stuff involving this game, and I fear, unfortunately, given some of the behavior and some of the coverage, this will not be the last controversy. There's going to be plenty more to come, and it's
Oh,
crazy
I
to
hope.
see how much
I
they're
hope
shooting
there's
themselves in
more
the
to
foot.
come.
Do I think this game is going to sell 0 copies? Absolutely not. I think overall it'll sell a good amount of copies.
Yeah,
'cause
there's no way it
just that
sells
much of a
0
cake-
copies. Okay, that's not possible. There's going to be people who are diehard Assassin's Creed fans who will buy it no matter how bad it is, hoping it'll be good, and then cling desperately to that hope and trick themselves into thinking that it's good. And if they think it's good, good for them. I don't want them to feel like they wasted their money on something that they really, really love.
in fan base, and a lot of people who are in the normie side of the internet, they're like blown away by what they're seeing without really understanding why so many people are offended with these additional details that involve Ubisoft. But I think it'll do fine, but not as fine as it could have without all of this controversy, and they really limited themselves.
All you had to do
just
was
like
make a
so
good
many
game. I
other
mean,
developers
Assassin's
these days
Creed
who
is
just can't
guaranteed to
keep
sell
their
well
mouths shut.
if you
But for now,
don't
that's gonna
screw
do
it
for
up.
this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.
All right.
And welcome back to this US Open office.
What do you guys think about this? Are you going to buy the game? Leave a comment down below. Also, check out his video. Rev Says Desu puts a lot of work into his stuff. I think he had some really good takes. Nothing wrong with that. I think he's pretty based on usual. That's why I'm following him. I'm definitely not going to play it, but Assassin's Creed has never really appealed to me. I'm just here for the drama. I'm here for the tea. I'm here for the content, and I am here to make fun of people who are making bad games on purpose. Isn't that what life is really about? All right, thank you very much, YouTube. Appreciate you watching me. Appreciate you spending time with me. I really enjoyed it. Follow me. Give me a subscription if you feel I earned the subscription. Catch me on Twitch. You can watch me crash out live. It'll be fun. We can go crazy together, guys. It's 2025. That's what it's all about. Love you. Bye.